that specific soda brand was someone that every single year put a lot of money and time into something that was probably way too much money and created something that everyone always was like, oh, okay, this is that thing each year.
I'm sure it's not, but it's either ASCII or ASCII. Depends on where you are in the world.
Whenever I make stupid stuff is when I'm like, oh, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, and then comes the question of who decides that. Is it the corporation or is it the creators? If you've been keeping up with the news, you know that AI tools are consistently being thrown at us. And as a creative, a part of my job is trying to keep up with that. Which is why I'm sitting down with Ryan Selvy, motion designer and artist based in Brooklyn, who's been building work, community, and conversations in public via live streaming and motion design. Now, whether or not you agree with our AI opinions, I think this is an important discussion to have and something to think about as AI is shaping the future of creativity as we speak. What's actually changing in motion graphics and design, where AI can help you, where it falls short, and how creators can stay grounded without chasing trends. Ryan, welcome to the show. I think I'm really interested in learning more about your takes and hot takes on creativity, motion design, and AI. But with that said, why don't you give us a quick elevator pitch of who you are, what you do?
Well, my name is Ryan Selvy. I'm an artist based in Brooklyn. I mostly specialize in motion design. So the things that move on screen, whether it's like an explainer video or if you're watching a video and like bottom thirds pop up, those are things that I really like. But I'm classically trained in both graphic design and illustration. I do a lot of live streaming. Live streaming's fun because I get to merge both the idea of like the performative high school theater kid and the graphic design interests that I've always had. And I like the idea of like interstitials, like back in Nickelodeon when things used to like pop up and be like, you're watching Nick. I've always thought those were really cool. And that lives on in its own right, in its own way in live streaming.
I want to start big picture and ask you what you think about when you look at motion design in 2026 and what actually makes something feel good to you, right, when you look at it.
I like lots of colors because we are now obviously designing not only for specific screens that, are only on a TV, but, everything that we look at from an iPad to your phone to your laptop to billboards, like everything is constantly moving, which is really cool. So motion is more important than it has ever been, especially for brands, for both like large companies and individual like branding of yourself. Um, I really like when people mess with different frame rates to make things feel choppier intentionally. And I also just really like characters. I'm a big mascot and character guy. If you can make something cartoony, I've always loved cartoons. And seeing any of that is really fun in motion design for me.
Yeah, as we've seen asteroid fields and a lot of your work actually, which I enjoy. Do you think that motion design today is being driven more by style trends rather than just workflows in general?
I think probably workflows and needs of demands of like algorithms for social networks, for commercials and advertisements. I think that drives a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think the creators behind it are getting more excited with the more avenues that they can explore. There are new programs that help you interact better with apps and websites, which previously took a lot of coding. Now you can kind of just build it in. There's also new introduction of easier 3D programs and the idea of being able to not need a super strong computer because computers are getting stronger. Um, I think that, yeah, a lot of it always comes down to what clients are asking for, but also artists are getting really excited about just the new avenues that are being introduced every single week, it feels like.
Yeah, no, it's like AI is everywhere and it's constantly being thrown at my face. And I'm like, what new tool can I learn to improve my workflow or speed up my workflow or actually be part of the game? Did you feel like that when you saw CES and AI was everywhere? How did that make sense?
So I always say I have a really hard time I've always been like a very futurist techie guy. I
Hmm.
always like to have home automation set up. Like I always am trying new websites. Ever since I was little, like I remember I was like one of the first people to get like MySpace. I know I'm aging myself there. But I've always been like, I need to check out the new tech. I need to check out the new tools. I need to check out, and that's always really existed fine
Hmm.
with the other side of me, which has been like art and design and creating. And they've existed together really harmoniously for a really long time. And I would say only within the last 4 to 5 years have they come into social conflicts, especially within the community. AI obviously being at the forefront of it. I have my own qualms with it. I have my own excitement about it, and being able to navigate it and be able to find the things that I find are important and exciting about it, and finding the things that I would change is both exciting and very scary. I'm trying to diversify my career in a way that I still find things that bring me joy and still scratch that creative itch, but hopefully still provide occupation, because I don't know what my job will be in literally 5 years. Like, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nervous
I hope.
laughter.
Yeah. Yeah, we were in sync on that. I think this is a common um emotion in the industry, and I feel like it is so scary but also exciting at the same time, because this was when internet came into existence and everybody felt the same. And it's so interesting that while tools are becoming easier and more accessible to people to get into the industry, the ones who are already there kind of feel afraid, um and want to change things. And you mentioned that, so what are some things that you'd like to change about AI as it is right now?
I think definitely policy. I think definitely the way people are kind of held accountable for the ways that they either train their models or the energy that they use, the ways that they implement it and consent for both the way that they train it and also when it's being used, how it's being used. Like, I think that a lot of our issues with it come down to not the technology itself, but the way that the people that are creating it are either manufacturing it or controlling it or using it for nefarious reasons. And then also like rules for thee, not for me, then can turn around and then be like, don't pirate our stuff. Not pirate, but don't like I think ChatGPT is introducing something soon where they want to have some sort of credit if you brainstorm using their product. And I'm like, okay, well, you trained off of things without giving credit back to those creators. Like, why suddenly
Hmm.
is that a thing? And it's not unique to ChatGPT. That's just the one that I can think of like right now. And so I think a lot of our
It's
issues come down to that, honestly.
Yeah, it's because they're becoming too big
Yeah.
for the industry and they're taking over everything. I think OpenAI is doing a good job with that, even with, like, I like their marketing strategy and their positioning in the sense that a lot of people are not afraid of using ChatGPT. And it's not the traditional AI. Even a lot of creators use ChatGPT and think it's okay, even though it is training on models. I personally use ChatGPT, but not in the same way. Like, I've seen on LinkedIn, people just blatantly copy paste ChatGPT stuff, and you can tell, like, you're a human being. I can tell that you don't talk like this. I can tell that
Yeah.
this is not, I can tell that this is no, there's no emotion. And that actually brings a good point of storytelling and the reason of the craft. So how important do you think is the why behind the animation, and how much does that matter to you personally?
I think it's just like anything else. Like, as soon as you introduce any new tool or technology, like it's going to be a lot more accessible to a lot more people. And you just want to make sure that the people that are using the tools are people who care about what they're doing and they're not just grifting. Like, I remember when ChatGPT first came out and suddenly Amazon was overthrown with books that were just fully written by ChatGPT. Um, Obviously that's never going to be as interesting as someone who sits down and cares about their characters and their stories. Maybe they use ChatGPT to brainstorm or work with things, but they're going to go back and reiterate, and they're going to work, not reiterate, they're going to iterate with,
Hmm.
the things that then it outputs. I think that the intent is like 95% of the output, because if you don't care about it, then why is it going to be good?
I don't think I've seen a lot of motion designers use AI in the process, other than the fact that they're using code to animate something. Like, for instance, I saw this website processing which does code to animation or motion, and it uses like ASCII art and then makes, or ASCII art. I don't know how to say that, but it
Yeah,
uses
I don't know
ASCII art.
either. Is it? I also I like. I'm always like, is it AC? Is it ASCII? Like, I was always like, ASCII.
I,
ASCII.
So I have no. It's one of those
Acai? Is it
things.
acai? Is it an acai bowl?
I'm sure it's not, but it's either
Um,
Ask I or ASCII. Depends on where you are in the world. But this
right.
is a worldwide podcast, so I guess we can say either way. But yeah, what do you think about that? Is AI creeping into motion design lately?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the idea. I don't know what my job's going to be in 5 years.
Mm,
I've seen a lot of like exploration. A lot. I love to watch Motion Mondays, which is from the School of Motion every Monday. And they really have been starting to explore with it as like little gags at the beginning of every one of their episodes. Um, Also, it's been interesting to see AI in the tools that you can get as extensions into like After Effects or Premiere. I know that Adobe also just launched AI that is smarter with masking, which, like, thank God, because masking can be such a pain. And sometimes with on system stuff, it has not been as good, but they just implemented an AI system on your own system that doesn't have to leave your computer that can then mask
mm,
things out. And so tools like that, I fully welcome. Get rid of the boring parts for me. Um, that said, I don't want to necessarily take a picture of a soda can and say, turn this into an advertisement and not have any control over the motion, because that would be sad. And I enjoy having that control.
mm. That's interesting. So now I'm almost wondering about some of the AI ads that we see floating around. And one of the most controversial ones, I'm not gonna say who, but they launch a Christmas campaign every year or something, and they make an ad out of it. And if you haven't seen the original one, you don't really know the story. But if you have, you can tell that they're recreating it. And it kind of makes me I have different opinions about it because I did a live stream on Adobe Live showcasing how you can make a Christmas ad using a product packaging that you have designed. But I designed the branding, I did the packaging, I made my own mockups the old school way using Photoshop, using Illustrator, whatever. And then just as a story or how to promote my product during Christmas, I did that. So I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I support it
I
100%.
See, for me, like, part of Christmas and Christmas ads is they have always notoriously been extremely expensive and
Hmm.
extremely overkill as far as like craftsmanship and art. But like the whole idea of the holiday season is always kind of like charity and giving back and like embracing relationships and the beauty of life and art. And like that specific soda brand was someone that every single year put a lot of money and time into something that was probably way too much money, and created something that everyone always was like, "Oh, okay, this is that thing each year," and you knew that it had heart. And the fact that it was replaced, they were like, "Oh, you were able to do it in only like 3 months with a small team." It's like, okay, well, half of the selling point of that thing was the fact that you put so much time and effort and love and artists and gave so many artists jobs in order
Hmm.
to create that thing. And maybe that's not for everyone, maybe that's just for artists, but for me it was very much that. And so I think that by just entirely replacing that with AI things, it was a disservice to their brand messaging and the final product. So
Yeah.
it's a thumbs down for me, dog.
Yeah. So do you think client expectations have also changed as a motion designer in the industry in the last few years? Have you experienced anything like that?
Perhaps. I think a lot of the clients don't fully understand what is possible and what's not possible, but I think
Hmm.
that's always been something to navigate with clients. Going back
Yeah.
to like early days, once you did it on the computer, people thought, you could hit the enhance button, or you can just hit the like animate this button. And so there are parts where that is becoming a thing, but still it's not there, and it's still not going to have the same results as someone is thinking. I think
Hmm.
AI taught me that a lot too, was the importance of creative direction and the idea that like when you're picturing something in your brain, you can eloquently verbalize and articulate exactly what's in your head, and it can still be interpreted completely different and come out with a different output. um and it's just like, wow, there are so many variables to literally everything that you say. And yeah, there's something to be said about having this hands-on modifications that you can make when you're making something yourself.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think it's so true. And I think that brought up so many things for me because I think initially when as an illustrator, you draw a 2D thing and then the client comes back to you and tells you to draw it in a different pose. That's now possible with AI. And it's so interesting because I feel like it's all the movies that we've seen over the past 20 years, and then that's going to be the future in the next 10 years or five. I don't know.
In the next year,
Um,
honestly, there's already stuff that can already kind of switch the pose. So that's already kind of a thing. I mean, you also even have like Adobe Turntable, which
yeah,
is
that's
where you
that's
can
exactly what I was
360
thinking
it.
about. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then there's also, yeah, you can use models to then go and say, all right, move the arms to put it into a different pose.
Yep.
Wild. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So right now, what AI tools do you actually use versus what looks like good on the internet?
I definitely don't use anything for final outputs that are AI. Like I never just like generating something and post it. I
Mm,
feel like I use a lot of like removing backgrounds, tools. If I need to iterate on something, I can maybe generate something as a piece of inspiration or focusing as a reference image and seeing how it is. But to me, it's always the in between and never the final product. Um, I would say that I use a considerable amount of chat gpt for anything from planning, brainstorming, rewording things, research, which you always have to be careful with, just like anything else. But the thing that
mm,
I really like about chat is being able to ask it something, and if it spits out an answer that's not the answer that I need, being able to give it context to then follow up to then help me get to where I need to go. um so I would say those are probably the biggest that I am using on a regular basis. And
mm.
then all the any of these tools that are about to come out, like the masking, I'm very excited about, if you can't tell. To get rid of the tedious stuff. Like I don't want to rotoscope anymore. I would love. Remember in like Adobe Max, which by the way, if no one is familiar, I do a lot of contract work with Adobe Live. So I know a lot about Adobe, so that's why I keep bringing them up. They're not like paying me to do anything, but um, I mean, they're paying to contract me, but they're not paying for me to shill them. But I do see that they are doing something with maybe being able to like name your layers, and that, yes, please, because help me fix all the things in my work process that I'm bad at and that I don't want to
Mm.
do. Don't take the things that I want to do. Take the things that I don't want to do. You know?
Yeah,
Um,
and then comes the question of who decides that.
yeah,
Is it the corporation or is it the creatives? And I think right now it's more so a mix of both because I somehow want to believe that there's a world out there where all these big tech companies have a creative director telling them that maybe this is the right way to go. But that's just the optimistic side of things. Maybe there's
right.
not. Maybe there's just a coder behind their desk and telling them what to do. And it's all
Yeah.
happening. And there's no
Well,
creative influence.
it's also one of those things you just can never. There has never been a accurately predicted future.
Hmm.
You look at any of these technologies that have come in our lifetime, like one of the most influential, obviously being social media. Like if you look back, it's the second time I bring up MySpace, but you bring up MySpace, like there was no feed, there was no like thing that you were going to search. You were like clicking on profiles and going. You were maybe doing bulletins. You went to Facebook. I remember they introduced the feed, and that was a thing. But the whole
Hmm.
idea was like you were connecting with people that you knew in real life. Now, like you never post personal things to grid anymore that are just your personal life. It's all very outward facing. And if you were to ask somebody in 2008 where social media was going, they would be completely wrong about where it is. And so, just with any new technology, any new invention, it's impossible to predict where it's going to go. And I think a lot of venture capitalists and shareholders and companies are just throwing money at a direction they think it's going to go. But
Hmm.
as evidence of the last 3 years, like we're in a completely different place than any of us would have guessed back in 2023. So
Yeah, it's wild.
we'll see.
I think it kind of takes me to this movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but Ready Player One.
Of course.
Um
I'm a
yeah, of
big
course you
sci-fi
have.
guy.
Of course
Yeah.
you have.
I love
And
video
I
games. I
think
love sci-fi.
yeah.
Of course I've seen Ready Player One.
Do you think that Ready Player One was a true depiction of what the future is going to be, or maybe it's even close?
I think that it can be an abstract idea of it. Um,
Hmm.
I think if anything, we've seen over the years, like Google Glass came out and that failed. They then tried to do the metaverse and that failed. I have a Quest 2, which I think was like the second headset that Facebook released with Oculus. And there were things that I really liked about it that were really cool. It was a really interesting, immersive experience. But I always tell people when anyone were to walk in on me using it, it felt like I was naked. Like it was just really embarrassing and really isolating and strange because you didn't know your environment.
Yeah.
Um, it is one of those things that I think the technology is constantly circle the drain in the way that not the drain is the end of it, but it is getting to the point where it in the next 10 years, I think is going to be something that we put on our faces, whether that's the new Ray Bans that Meta is coming out with, like, augmented reality.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a big hefty thing you put on your face. I think it's
Hmm.
going to have to build up from there. Um, but I think it is one of those things that we kind of fail at a bunch of times and laugh at before it then becomes reality. Another really good example is years ago, um, one of the very first like microtransactions for a video game was horse armor. And when it came out, it got ripped to shreds. Like, why would you spend money on something in a video game, let
Hmm.
alone just like a cosmetic appearance? And now it is one of the biggest driving forces of the video game industry is to have microtransactions, and people are making millions of dollars off of microtransactions. So all to say is that just because something is criticized or dumb or doesn't work out at the beginning doesn't mean that it's a dead idea. And I
Hmm.
think that things like Ready Player One definitely touch on things that it's obviously the most dystopian endpoint, but it is definitely somewhere where we could end up. Hopefully not, but there are pieces that ring true.
I think that sheds light on some of the glasses that already exist. There's this company called Even Realities, and they launched their first one, G1,
Mm.
I think a couple of years ago. And then they launched G2 very recently with a ring, which is called R2. And you
Mhm.
can basically use your gestures to do tasks on the glasses, and their AI is so much better, their screen is so much better, and it's augmented reality, and you can see everything. You can use prescription on the glasses, and I
Yeah.
think that's slightly part of the future as well, where yes, I'm reading the news while talking to you, or reading a teleprompter while talking to you, or translating what you're saying in a different foreign language while I'm talking in real time. And I
Yeah.
think that part is really exciting, where yes, it's adding to my life and adding to my
Yes.
relationships or adding to my travel experience. But I don't really know if I'm ready for Ready Player One yet.
No, there's a lot of scary stuff to it. I mean, too, there's also like work life balance is hard enough as it is right now. Once it's strapped to your face, like if you're taking a walk and your boss messages you, it pops up on the screen like while
Yeah.
you're out in nature. Like that'll be tough.
Yeah.
But the one that I really want, and obviously we also run into privacy issues, but the one that I really want is like if I have a contact book of people that I have manually added of faces when I meet people, if I could just have everyone in the world have a name tag. um oh my gosh, my anxiety at parties would be so much better because then I would be
Yeah.
like, I don't have to spend half the conversation worrying about your name. I just can cross reference it.
Yeah, I relate to that 100%. I always forget names and I can remember faces. And I'm like, what was your name? Have we met? I know we've met. Maybe? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, privacy issues are a big concern. I was using Pendant by Limitless, which is an AI recorder,
Oh,
or
were you?
AI. I was
How was it?
before it was taken over by Meta. I was
Okay.
using it before everything happened, and everything hit the fan, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this anymore, because it's not HIPAA compliant anymore, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I want everything to be available to Meta. And yeah,
Right.
I had strong opinions about that. Everyone on their Slack community had strong opinions about that, but before everything happened, I think it was really helpful for me to just take down notes in
Hmm.
general, like if I'm having a conversation, if I was having a meeting, and even just for myself, like I have literally used it for an idea or multiple ideas that I've gotten at night during the day while talking to someone or taking down a note, because
Yeah.
there are some things about human conversation that me as a non-diagnosed ADHD human being cannot understand in
Yeah.
that moment. And I'm like, what was that idea that I got? And then I go back to those notes and I'm like, oh, cool. Now I can use Chat GPT, which is built into Limitless, to then iterate on those ideas or think about something from there or start a new project. And I think that was really helpful for me. But then the founder, Dan Soroker, announced that Meta is taking over. And I'm like, okay, cool. I
Right. And that
guess
goes
this
back
is
to
just
what
a
we
thing
were
now.
is what we were talking about kind of at the beginning too, where it's like the biggest thing is a lot of, I think, the regulation and the way that we approach it. One of the
Mm,
biggest reasons I haven't gotten the Ray-Ban glasses is because they're Meta. And Meta has over the years had many infractions of data breaches, misuse of data, you know,
mm.
Cambridge Analytica. Like it's been, and I'm like, okay, so I gotta wait till somebody else makes it. But they're also going to have the best technology because they have the most data. So it's like,
So do you think AI in general is making designers or creators lazier, or do you think it's pushing them to think bigger and just making them go into directions that they wouldn't have before?
I think it once again goes back to the idea of intent. You have to be intentional with it. You can't have it just um, replace everything. You have to have it as part of your workflow and part of your process, not the the solution. Same with like when you're using ChatGPT and you're asking it questions. Like I think there's something to be said about if I was in high school and I didn't understand something about a history lesson, being able to then ask questions and do research and go farther and ask questions rather than just ask for the answer, which all comes down to how you use it. So I think it can definitely make people lazier that want to be lazier. I think it can also really help expand creativity and understanding if you want to explore and grow yourself. So back goes back to intention, definitely.
Hmm. And how do you think AI will change what motion portfolios look like? I know we talked about the uncertainty of the future, but just if you were to take a guess at it, what do you think it looks like?
I think farther down the process, I think you'll have more thought out ideas because before it would take a lot of time to iterate and come up with ideas, and you kind of just relied on yourself. I
Hmm.
think with being able to have someone you can bounce off ideas with, and when I say someone, obviously, uh, large language models are not people, but the idea of the feeling like you're talking to something and going back and forth, I think that the execution and the mock-ups and how far a project can go, I think it'll help people dream bigger. So I think projects will feel bigger in portfolios.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think just as AI evolves too, I think there'll be timing and pacing that obviously doesn't work right now. Well, in my
Yeah.
experience anyway. And then just I know we touched on this during your last file new show on Adobe Live as well. That sonic branding is a big thing now. And I
Mhm.
think in the future, sound design will also be possible with AI. And but knowing the craft is also more important. But so if I don't know how to make anything in GarageBand, which that's a whole different tangent because I hated GarageBand. But knowing how to make something is more important than actually asking someone else to make it for you, because if you don't know how it's done, how would you ever prompt AI or even art direct someone else to do it or even
Yeah.
know that it's doing it correctly? So I think it all comes back to, like you said, knowing the craft and knowing the skill and your intention behind storytelling as well. So yeah, I agree.
I mean, in the same way, it's like I have an interest in making a like a video game. It's my goal before I'm 40, so I still got a few more years. There are websites that say like I could go to ChatGPT and I could have it code things for me. But one of the biggest things about it is like I don't know coding and I'm not an
Mm,
expert. The idea would then be my only lifeline would also be the same tool that I'm using to create it. So like if I'm sitting down and telling chat gpt to code something for me, something breaks or something isn't the way that I want or something isn't optimized, I'm not knowledgeable enough to then go in and be able to be like, no, fix this part. I would only have to be like, it's not working. So there's definitely something to be
mm,
said about working with experts, people who know how to code. And maybe if you are a coder, maybe you are using ChatGPT to then code and then go back and edit that code. Um, but I think, yeah, there's something still to be said about you need to still be an expert in something to be able to take shortcuts, because you can only take shortcuts if you know the long road.
Yeah, yeah. Now this brings up a new thing for me that I used to code, but I have never made an app with ChatGPT. So maybe I should vibe code something and use ChatGPT and Claude to, I don't know, make an app.
Yeah. Also, I'm learning. I'm working on a website right now with a friend of mine, and he's doing
Hmm.
all the data, and I'm doing like marketing. But as I work with him more closely, I'm learning very quickly about how expensive the internet is, and the fact that you have data and advertisements everywhere is because, like, when you're loading things, it is charging you per image that you're grabbing, and I worry that these people who don't know coding and they don't understand are going
Hmm.
to rack up gigantic bills of monthly data that the vibe coding just kind of built out for them, and then they're suddenly thousands of dollars in debt because they thought they were going to make a quick buck out of making a quick website,
Hmm.
which that's its
That's a good,
own
yeah,
beast.
that's a good shout. I don't think most people realize it, especially how accessible it has made for anyone to do anything
Yeah.
basically now. I don't think they even know. Well, this is me generalizing, but most people probably wouldn't know the details or how to host a website or how much would that domain cost or what's the long term subscription of that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how do you feel about real time AI assistants baked into tools? Like, for instance, you're doing, let's say you're a newbie, you've never done color grading, and now there's real time AI assistants color grading in a tool that you're using. How do you feel about that?
I think it can certainly be helpful. Uh, Once again, comes down to control. I want to be able to see everything that it does. I want to be able to understand and work backwards. I know back in early days when I was messing around with getting into Photoshop, one of the reasons I got into it was there's this website called Zanga, and it was like LiveJournal. And you could use code to change how your page looked. And one of the things that I did to learn and got into graphics and stuff is I would went into a code that was already pre-made. I was in sixth grade, so I'm not going to be able to code my own thing, but be
Hmm.
able to go in and reverse engineer and understand different elements of it that I could then apply and customize my own. I think with AI, it would be another kind of learning curve for being able to go in and seeing how something is done and be able to reverse engineer it to be able to do it yourself, or at least be able to articulate it to be able to do it itself.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, as I foolishly keep reiterating, just like intention and being able to not just press the button, but press the button and then understand what's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. From my personal experience, I've used ChatGPT to learn color grading and DaVinci Resolve, and because everything's there so complicated. And I'd been using Adobe tools for the longest time. And then I tried to learn more tools because I was like, well, I gotta teach myself everything. So let's
Of
learn
course.
DaVinci Resolve. And
Yes.
so I was doing color grading in that. I took a screenshot of the things, of the graphs and histograms, whatever. And then I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, this is what I want. I want a warm tone, whatever. This is what I want. Tell me what values to change and how it'll impact the outcome. And I
Yep.
think going back and forth and having that conversation element helped. But
Oh yeah.
also looking back at it now, this was like almost a year ago. And now when I go back to the color grading that ChatGPT helped me do, it was terrible.
Yeah, but it also helped you explore elements and maybe features that you didn't, understand. That's a really good use case. That if you asked how I use it, I definitely have used it for tech support a lot. And
Mhm.
sometimes it is radically wrong. Sometimes it's like, go into this menu and there will be this button, and I have to be like, that button does not exist. They're like, oh
Yep.
yeah, you're so right. Sorry, do this instead. I'm like, that also does not exist. But then there's other times where it's like it helps me troubleshoot something down to being able to get really nitty gritty context that, like, in the past I would have to go to some weird forum from 2012 that someone had the same issue and somebody was nice to help, but do a
Mm,
lot more digging. So using screenshots for that has been helpful. I've even used it for a very complicated video game that I'm playing, where I've like screenshotted my inventory and been like, I want to have this output for, like, built for charisma. Like,
mm,
what is this a good outfit selection for my video game? And it being able to then help me with that has also been helpful. So I think, yeah, being able to use it as a tool in that way, not just video games, but even your color grading, can help you learn more and give you reinforcement on a more personal level than previously accessible.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. What video game is that? I'm so curious.
It's called Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It is notoriously difficult and very challenging and punishing. And it is taking over my life. I like hate it and love it, and
Hmm.
I've probably put like 80 to 90 hours in it this year.
Nice.
So
Nice. This year? Wait, it's been 27
27
days. Oh,
days, I
goodness.
know. It was during that first period when we weren't working at the beginning of the year, and boy oh boy, I have a whole life in that game. And I'm not even halfway done, so we'll see.
That reminds me of me playing Hogwarts Legacy, and now I almost want to replay it and
Yeah.
ask ChatGPT how to go there and complete some of the quests that I couldn't the last time. And I'm like,
It's also good because
maybe I should.
you can do it to be like, I don't want to spoil this when I'm looking up for the answer. Like, this is the exact part of the game that I'm in. Like,
Yeah,
give me contextual information and help so that I don't accidentally spoil it for myself, but I also can get help in this exact moment.
yeah, no, I feel that. I think it's important to not ruin the story, which I think
Yes.
comes back to what we were talking about earlier. So, this is going to be like a hot take question. Do you think AI has exposed people who don't understand fundamentals?
Um, I don't know if it exposed them as much. It's one of those things where like the internet's footprint is always there. And so just whenever you're doing anything,
Hmm.
always remember that like even if it's undetectable in its time, it might in a week be very obvious. One of the easiest, I think, indicators examples was like a year ago when the M dash was like highlighted as being written with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And suddenly you could look back at a bunch of stuff and you'd be like, oh wow, there really are a lot of M dashes here. Same with like generative any images or stuff. There's like a certain look, whereas like when it first came out, people couldn't tell what was AI and what's not. And we're getting to a point again where like it's even harder to be able to tell. But like
Hmm.
that's not to say that it's not going to be, identifiable in the coming time. So I think in that regard, there were times where people use things and they claimed to not have, and it just became very obvious.
Hmm.
But that would probably be the worst case scenario that I can think of, or
Yeah, and
examples.
I think labeling your work as AI is also important if you're using it, because that just builds, even if there's gray area right now, you're right, and everything on the internet stays forever.
Yeah.
So if you're falsely not tagging your work as AI while you're incorporating it in the meantime, maybe tomorrow's people are gonna take a screenshot of that, which you actually can do with some of the existing tools right now and tell if it was AI generated. So yeah, I don't know. Watch out, you listeners. I don't know. So that actually brings up a good point of someone who's just starting out and feeling overwhelmed. What advice would you give a new creative in 2026?
I have learned to in the way that I have learned programs over the years. I have learned that the best way that I learn personally is through play and
Hmm.
through joy. Just open something up and start creating, and once you hit a roadblock, then learn that roadblock and then go from there. I have tried several different times, and everyone's different, but I've tried several different times to follow classes and tutorials where they want you to like do something and go along to like learn fundamentals, and I've always lost interest in that. um I would say learn the fundamentals and learn how to create things, and if you run into a roadblock and you find yourself using AI, like use AI in that sense as a learning point to learn how to do it, even if
Hmm.
then later you are like, cool, I can take that shortcut. It's important to be able to know, like, I think one of the ones that I use all the time, we talked about earlier, is like removing the background. I think it's important to be able to go in and be able to learn at least processes to remove a background manually in case it doesn't do it the way you want or whatever.
Hmm.
But then after you learn that, like, yeah, totally use the remove background, because like speed up your workflow, move on, move forward. But you're also going to learn things there that maybe may get to somewhere else where you then create something really cool. Um, so I would say learn through play, and if you take shortcuts, make sure you learn what those shortcuts are, because those shortcuts, are shortcuts for a reason, but also could maybe learn a thing or two about your process.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think a lot of people stray away from advice to new creatives in general, but I think that's something to be mindful of for sure in 2026 and in the future, not just this year. I'm not aging the podcast episode, but um, if there's something that you'd say to creatives about how to protect their mental health with AI, what would that be, or how do you do it personally? Because I know it can take a toll on you.
I wish I had the answer. Um, I say just be adaptable. Don't put all your eggs in any one basket, whether that's a
Hmm.
social platform, whether that's a program, whether that's an income stream. I think for the longest time, they always said, often incomplete saying is a jack of all trades is a master of none. But the full saying is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes a better than a master of one.
Hmm.
So the idea, I think, like for the longest time, we were taught like, no, you need to be good at one thing. You need to be good at one thing. Like generalists aren't good. Now everyone is like totally flipping the script. Like, oh wait, never mind, never mind. You have to be a master of everything, or at least like a generalist of everything. And I think that's so good because like things will start to disappear or change or turn into different things, and
Hmm.
you just can't grow super attached to one certain aspect of being a creative because that's also not why you got into it to begin with. Like, you know, I think just continuously learn new things, new programs, new techniques, new ideas, and you should be okay. That's how I at least navigate it because there really is no way with AI to pick a safe career right now. And that's not just the creative community, like accountants, doctors, um, janitors, like any job right now is being disrupted by AI and we don't know where it's going to go, but there's no one thing that you can go to and say like this is the thing that is going to be safe.
Hmm.
So know that you're not alone and know that everyone is experiencing this. And yeah, just try to stay positive.
Yeah. I think that's a good place for us to ask this final question is how do you stay excited about making work?
Making stupid stuff.
Hmm.
Like whenever I make stupid stuff is when I'm like, oh, this is why I do what I do. And that can either be a full product that is just like time to create for me, or it can be like just putting in something goofy into a design that goes to a client. And if they say no, you take it out. But like it's a reminder that it's something that I created and it's something that, brings me joy and reminds you why you got into to begin with. Um, just make stupid stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for coming to the podcast.
Of course.
I hope this is a good reminder for our listeners to be, I guess, receptive to change, but also remembering going back to the mood board. So why you started it all and what you're passionate about is really important. Thank you so much again. Thanks for listening,
Yeah.
and we'll see you on another one.
Bye.